Hi, everybody. I'm Olivia F. Scott, the Associate Professor of Advertising here at Loyola University, founder of Emerge Alliance's marketing consultancy, and best of all, host of Behind the Ad, where we peel the layers of the media, advertising, and marketing onion back to really demystify the industry for you. You know, today we have a remarkable guest with us. She is definitely not your typical advertising executive. She's a trailblazer, a visionary, and a true industry maven. We have with us today, my friends, the one and only beacon, Michelle Edelman. Michelle is the CEO and Chief Strategy Officer of PETERMAYER, an agency that we in New Orleans know and love, an agency that's been at the forefront of advertising for over half a century, and one of the most noted agencies here in the region. Michelle's journey from the client side to leading this 55-year-old agency is nothing short of inspiring. Today, we're delving into the dynamic world of contemporary advertising and exploring one of the often overlooked fundamentals of the industry, strategy. Right? Say it with me, strategy. Get ready for an insightful conversation that promises to be both enlightening and transformative. Welcome, won't you please, with me to Behind the Ad, Michelle Edelman. Michelle, thank you.
Well, thank you for that amazing introduction. I'm here to peel the onion back with you.
That's right. I mean, you are the woman. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Right? I mean, let's start with the fact that it's a year overdue, but congratulations
Thank
on
you.
being the CEO. Are you the first woman CEO?
Yes, I'm the first non-family member as well.
How did you earn that?
You know, I've been at the agency. This month is my 10th anniversary. And
Okay.
so I think coming in and heading up the strategy teams and really partnering with the senior executives there, really getting to know the agency, it has incredible values. And so that was something that was really important to me. And I think very important to the family when they looked towards the future of the agency. They really wanted the heritage of that culture to continue.
What does that include? But congratulations again,
Thank
over and
you.
over, and
Thank
even
you.
first family member, first non-family member, and first woman. Like,
Yeah.
shout out. Did not know that. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So, talk to me a little bit about the values, though. What are those values? What's that heritage about PETERMAYER?
I think that one of the most important values is this idea of being better together, that you can create. People love to create, and there's certainly a moment where you create by yourself. But when you can create with others and make other people's ideas better, alongside your clients, alongside people that do different things that came from different backgrounds, to us, that's the diversity of thought that we look for and that we cherish within the agency. So that's one of the leading values that we have, and I think you really feel it within the company.
Very well. What is the first step in developing an ad campaign? There's nobody better that I can think of to ask this question but you. What's the first step in developing an ad campaign?
The first step you have to take is one of listening, and it's listening to the client, and understanding what challenges and what objectives that they have to solve. The second step is really to formulate that strategy, but the first step is really a listening step, and putting yourself in the problem that has to be solved.
Why is developing a strategy so critical to developing an ad campaign?
You know, I think that certainly there are people that create without having a strategic foundation. But I think that risks the client's investment. So, we're a commercial enterprise. We have to ultimately have our work in the marketplace. So knowing those levers to pull is going to make consumers and people think differently about a brand, overcome the barrier, and meet the objective. Those are the reasons to lay a strategy out. Otherwise, it really leaves our creators with the heavy job of having to outline that themselves, when their job is to really think of the idea that's going to make those objectives come to life.
But let's dig into that, right? We're peeling the layers back. When you say the word strategy, and I've looked it up, because I teach it, right? And strategy is a military term from strategos, which is just a plan, right?
Right.
But in the marketing and advertising field, what does the word strategy really mean, Michelle?
Wow. Well, I think a strong strategy is going to culminate in, you have to think about it as a relay race, and ultimately the person you're handing off to has to be able to take a baton that you've created that will help them make something new and original that will affect consumers.
Okay.
We have less and less of an attention span, as you know.
Clearly.
So,
yeah.
Having all of the data and all of the research and all of the information culled down into a single set of statements that can help creatives truly meet the goals of the business. That's really what a strategy is. Now, how we go about doing that, we interrogate, the consumer, the competitive set, the company and the brand, the origin story of that company and brand, the culture that's out, that's affecting people, and ultimately, develop, and all of those things can be very dynamic, and most marketplaces are very crowded with competition.
Yes.
So finding that difference, that point of difference that can really truly make a difference in that consumer's life, that's what we're really looking for. We're kind of matchmaking brands and people.
Correct.
And so in doing that, that strategy is going to show you here's where that intersection point can be.
Correct. Hate to put you on the spot, but can you give us an example, any example of any campaigns that you might have done now or a long time ago, what the strategy piece was? Like, this was the creative execution we saw for, like, let's see if I don't want to use McDonald's, but McDonald's, I'm loving it. That's a creative execution, but what's the strategy? So do you have an example you can share of, like, okay, that was a creative execution, but the strategy behind it must have been this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can talk about one of our own campaigns that we love.
Please.
Because we consider everybody at PETERMAYER to be strategically grounded. No matter what you do as a person, you have to be inquisitive, and you have to want to have your work actually work. So I think one of the great examples is one of our clients was the Mississippi Gulf Coast. It's essentially a beach area, a vacationing area. It spans actually like many communities and 62 miles of beach as you drive from here in New Orleans all the way to Florida. And sometimes people just consider it to be where the stopover, right? Like they're going to those beautiful beaches in Florida. They're passing all of these tourist attractions, all these museums, and this beautiful natural wildlife, and all these things that could constitute, something that they would love. So we wanted to put a pin on the map so people knew that was there, and not just a stopover, but
right.
someplace where they could stop and actually enjoy. So that's the objective, right? When we took a look at, the competition, we actually noticed that, like, those Florida beaches, while they're very famous and pristine, they're also very crowded. And they're also very, they don't necessarily give you the relaxation, the ability to connect with your loved ones that someplace that's a little less better known would be. And so we put it through a lot of those competitive filters, and that's really the point of difference, that where we were able to bring people together with that brand is that, there's a little bit more of an out-of-the-way, quiet place where you can convene and have all of those amenities. And so the creatives came up with the idea of calling it the Secret Coast, like that place that is not, it's a little bit lesser known, and so you're not going to have that same crush of, just getting the Instagram picture. You're really going to have the Instagram picture and the connection. And so the ability to be connected, that's the strategy. The going on vacation to have a connection where the backdrop is a beach is different than just consuming the beach. So that's the strategy. The strategy that led to the Secret Coast was people are longing for vacations that give them connection.
Beautiful. Thank you so much
for
that example. It really helped to illustrate it, because I still feel like strategy is something that's very elusive for people.
It can be. It definitely can be. And like, I just had a meeting where, a guy told me truthfully, he's like, well, nobody's going to see the strategy. They're all going to see the execution.
Yep.
I'm like, yes. And I always think of strategy as the caulk that holds the tile up. The tile's the vanity and the beauty,
Correct.
and it's going to make the shower. But yeah, good luck getting that to stick without the grout, the caulk. So we make it stick.
Got it. Beautiful. Have you ever seen a campaign actually succeed without a strategy? And do you know, what strategy is missing? Have you ever seen or known a campaign to really be okay without a strategy?
I mean, I think there are many campaigns and creative objects that get created that can be successful without a strategy. But like I said, it's hard to then convince a client that they should invest in that. It's like, the clients need to understand that marketing is not just a spend. It's truly an investment in building your brand for the long term and the short term. And so that consumers see it as something valuable for themselves. And so, sure, there's a ton of work out there that doesn't have a strategy that has informed it. And just by, having maybe the creative actually came up with the insight through observation and hit on something that actually worked. But can they take it through those proof points, especially for bigger advertisers that are going to spend seven figures on their marketing? That's a big risk. So the bigger the budget, and honestly, I feel like even smaller advertisers feel like their budgets are at risk. $20,000 to a small business is still a lot of money.
Yes.
And so starting with something, it doesn't have to be like, big data research, but starting with some starting point that you have sat and decided is the narrative of how consumers will interact with your brand is a starting point.
That dovetails so nicely into my next question. You talked about research, right? Research being the foundation of strategy. So we all know that research plays, or for those of you who don't know, research does play a critical role in developing your strategy. Yes. Tell us how research plays that role. Tell us, what is it about research? And a lot of times people hear research, they think of somebody with glasses in a library. What does research mean in the advertising world, and how does it actually play into creating a strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that research is a way for us to ask questions of the marketplace without putting stimulus out there. So we're, typically when you develop a strategy, you have a hypothesis, right? You've got, well, I believe that this is what is causing the barrier or the lack of, a lack of positive perception or whatever it is that is the issue you're trying to solve. You can then go out to, research is just going out to consumers and the marketplace and having conversations and talking about those and getting dimension around them. So whether, and a lot of people think of research as quantitative studies, having a lot of numbers. But sometimes research is just observational research. I mean, I've been that person that goes into someone's house and observes what's going on in their household and asks them some questions about how they're interacting with their kids and their electronics to really understand what is the role of this in parenting, right? So sometimes there's observational research. Sometimes, but then you can take that observational research and ask quantitatively, is this a way, do you ever use your laptop as a babysitting tool? And how do you feel about that? And you can get a sense of how many consumers feel, they have the right to do that or feel shame about it. And you can then put that in front of a client and say, this is where a lot of heat really is. And it gives clients confidence that, all right, if you walk down that path, then the creative is more likely to work. So researchers just are going out to the market and having conversations. That's really how I think about it.
And then, as we talked in our pre-conversation, that research gives you insights.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly.
So tell everybody what insights are and how insights play a role into developing a strategy.
Yeah, and it's a great question. I was at a seminar that the guy, the leader really put it beautifully, that, you have data. Data comes out of research, right? But data isn't insight. It's really just the reporting of findings.
Yes.
You then have to analyze that data and make it have meaning. But an insight takes a leap from that analysis and, gives it more depth of understanding and gives it potentially a new idea. So I can say that, for example, 3/4 of women continue to buy the same vegetables at the grocery store week after week, right? Okay. That's a piece of data.
Yes.
Analysis could be that that's the most widely available form of produce that is available to them in those markets. They're in a hurry to get home to their families, and so if they don't have a shopping list, then going in and buying like they normally do gives them, that's a behavior, that's a fast behavior. Those are some hypotheses that are a little bit of analysis. But the real leap could be something like, that women are afraid that the people in their household won't like something new. and that vegetables are particularly scary because people don't, generally don't like the vegetable category to begin with, especially if you have little kids. So I feel maybe there's a barrier in picking up that new thing, because what if it doesn't go over, and now I've missed a chance to get vegetables into my kid. That's an insight.
Right.
So you have to go along those paths, but I think that insights are what truly leads to that creativity.
Michelle, I have to stop for a second to ask you, did you make up that entire story?
I made up the entire story.
She's going really far along the path of like the women and the insights and the women in the household and the family not wanting things new. Really great insights you developed from that, kind of created data as well.
And it's a lot of just asking why and being curious, and even drawing from your own experience and your own observation over time. It becomes much easier to get to those leaps.
Yes. I mean, I teach insight as sight into.
Yes, that's a great thought.
Right?
Great thought.
It's just sight into something.
Yes.
It's like, for instance, I teach advertising research here, and we were talking about a stat that had like 49% of all college students are experiencing some type of issue with mental health, right? Especially after COVID. And I asked my students, I was like, what's going on? And they gave me some insights into why. Yeah. What are some of the drivers of it? COVID, anxiety, whatever. So it's understanding like the sight into it. The data is one thing, but going into.
Absolutely.
So final couple questions here. Can you once and for all help us understand the difference between strategy, objective, and tactic and how they work together? We understand strategy now, I think. I think we got strategy. But like, when I say, what's the objective of this, and then what are your tactics? Consistently, I find that students are just simply not able to grasp. And even sometimes I'm like, as I mentioned to you earlier, influencer marketing as a strategy and a tactic.
Yes.
So can you break down that terminology, strategy versus objective versus tactic?
Yeah, I think that at its basis, you always have to start from the objective. If you can crack the objective first and foremost really well, it is really the what is it going to take to make this brand or business successful? That, those objectives have to answer that question. So objective is, what are we trying to achieve? Really, it's the what, right? Mm-hmm. The strategy is kind of the uncovering of the how. Like, in what ways can we overcome these barriers? Like, what can we say to someone? What can we demonstrate to someone that will get those barriers met? And then the tactic is the thing that's applied against the strategy that makes it work. So it's kind of the what. It's like, what are we going to do? How are we going to act on the strategy to meet the objective?
Gotcha. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And in closing, let's talk about Chat GPT.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Mm-hmm. How do you find that it helps or hinders our creative industry?
It's interesting because Chat GPT is now very widely used, very widely known. There's a lot of emerging AI tools, and we actually have an initiative at the agency called Sidebar where we're looking at a lot of them and experimenting with a lot of them. Chat GPT in particular, I think that there are ways to use it that are incredibly productive for the advertising process. So in the past, where you might actually have to go to good old Google and ask Google to kind of bring you, all of the research on, the consumption of vegetables, for example. Mm-hmm. And you may spend the better part of a day or even a week, like combing through and looking at all of that data and figuring out what came from a good source, what didn't come from a good source, all those kinds of things, and rank ordering it and seeing what were the volume of data actually, what was studied the most, right? Mm-hmm. ChatGPT cuts that time into a fraction. Okay. So learning how to ask ChatGPT questions that will unearth those things very quickly, like asking ChatGPT, what are the top 5 concerns the top 5 studied concerns that mothers have about vegetables? And then you wait about 2 minutes and you've gotten farther faster than if you were to try to unearth that yourself. So I think it gives you the original pile and organizes the pile of information that's out there. What it doesn't do is it can't provide you, it limited in terms of analysis and completely unable to develop an insight. An insight is a leap. It should be a leap. It's a why. And like ChatGPT is kind of like, it's great at organizing large volumes of information quickly, But to truly get analysis out of that, you as a human have to compare those data sources to one another, see where the trends are happening, and that aha moment is really very human. So it's useful, but it's dangerous. It's dangerous to think that that's going to deliver you a unique insight that only your brand can handle. And the ability to apply the data to a brand or a situation, that's very unique and a very human process.
Beautiful. So thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
I had a student last semester that I caught doing some Chat GPT homework.
Yep.
And I think all of us, whether it's education or in the industry as practitioners, we're dealing with it and trying to figure out how to use it for good. You know? So, Michelle, you are at the helm of one of the leading agencies in the nation. Congratulations again.
Thank you.
Where are we going? Where's PETERMAYER going? What's next for PETERMAYER?
What's next for PETERMAYER is that we've been growing outside of the state of Louisiana. We have employees that are resident outside of the state. We'll likely have offices outside of the state.
Nice.
We're growing our strategic practices, and we're changing our positioning. So we'll be launching a new positioning late this year.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to share?
No, I just hope that, this is useful, and that I always invite people to contact me directly with questions, and anybody curious, I'm glad to talk to about anything.
Awesome. I do have one more question for you, which is about your path.
Yeah.
Right? So anybody who's like, oh my gosh, a woman who's a CEO of a major ad agency, how did she get there? Can you just tell them a little bit of your story? Like, how did you get there? I know you had 10 years at PETERMAYER, but before those 10 years, what did you graduate in? Where did you work? How did you actually establish this career?
Yeah, well, some of the topic for another podcast, but I did grow up thinking I was going to be a physician. So I have an undergrad degree in biochemistry, a master's in public health, and a master's in business administration from Northwestern University. So I ended up stumbling backwards into advertising. Many people do. You don't grow up wanting to be an account executive. I don't think.
I'm sorry. You don't. That's
And so, but I think that people people that end up being very successful in advertising, they have like an empathetic approach, which means they've had some life experiences, and they've gone through some soul searching, and they've gone through some change themselves. Yeah. And so we see all kinds of people come from all kinds of backgrounds. But I ended up on the client side working in marketing and advertising. I wasn't necessarily happy with the kinds of insights that my agencies would come to me with. And so ended up doing a lot of insight development on the client side, and then ultimately jumped over to the agency side, worked for agencies like Leo Burnett and Ogilvy, because I had really grown myself as a strategist.
Okay.
And I think that's one thing to take away, is that like your learned experience. I always think of advertising as the greatest blue collar, white collar profession there is, because much of it you learn from the job. If you take with you the tools of optimism and the abilities to ask why, and to not stop until you find answers, and to appreciate the creative process, you'll probably ultimately be successful in advertising. So I always tell people, don't worry that you don't have a marketing degree.
Correct.
Don't worry that you didn't go to a portfolio school. There's so many ways to get into this profession, and so many paths you can take. That that's what happened in my case. And I think rising as a senior executive, I just think that's it is within my makeup. Right, I'm an oldest child. My mother, I think, created a family of leaders in a way. And so I think that, if you have to just be completely, you have to be able to be unafraid of things that would really be scary to most people. I think I'm the only one in the company that can't quit. Right. So like I have to find ways to engage people, and to have them understand the mission, and help, give them the tools to help me lead. And so those are some scary concepts.
Correct.
And so being a CEO is that you have to have a composition of inner tools as well as education and preparedness.
Awesome. Thank you so much for
You're
being with us
welcome.
today. All right, everybody. So I'm hopeful that today's edition of Behind the Ad was insightful for you, pun intended, right? Hopefully you understand now what a strategy actually means. And for anyone who you're creating an ad campaign, whether you're a brand manager, whether you're a small business owner, or perhaps you are a rising student, high school or college, hopefully at Loyola. Regardless, what I'm hopeful is that you understand the need for there to be an underpinning of strategy for whatever you do. You know, just doing things haphazardly, it doesn't really have longevity. We're really hopeful that you understand how to create a strategy, what an objective is, what a tactic is, and when you're looking for an internship, that you would look at PETERMAYER, or if you're looking for an advertising agency, that you'll look at PETERMAYER. See you on the next edition of Behind the Ad. Until then, goodbye.